Hey everyone, and welcome. Today we're going to dive into the rational case for atheism, using C M Lorkowski's book, Atheism Considered, as our guide. Now, our goal here isn't about trying to change anyone's mind. It's about understanding the logic behind a worldview held by over 1 billion people. A worldview that, let's be honest, is often deeply misunderstood. So let's get right into it. All right, let's just start with a number, a huge one, over 1 billion. And no, that's not a stock price or how many followers someone has. That's the estimated number of people on this planet who say they have no godly commitments. We're talking atheists, agnostics, people with no specific religious affiliation. To really put that into perspective, the author points out something that's kind of mind-blowing. If you were to treat non-belief as a religion, it would be the third largest in the entire world, right behind Christianity and Islam. So yeah, we're definitely not talking about some tiny fringe group here. And this is where things get really interesting, because here's the paradox. Even though we're talking about a massive global population, in places like the United States, non-believers are consistently ranked as one of the most disliked and distrusted minorities. So how does that even make sense? To get to the bottom of that, we've got to dig into the actual framework of this worldview. And remember, the goal here for this explainer and for the book it's based on is not about persuasion. It's simply about understanding the rational case as the author lays it all out. Okay, let's get into the nitty-gritty because the definitions here are absolutely critical. The author argues that if we're going to have a real productive conversation about this, we have to be crystal clear about what non-belief actually is. And believe it or not, it's not as simple as it might sound. This slide does a fantastic job of breaking it down with a simple weather analogy. So on the left, you have, I don't believe it will be sunny. That's a neutral stance, right? You're just lacking a belief. That's what we'd call agnosticism. But look at the right. I believe it will not be sunny. See the difference? That is a firm positive claim, and that requires evidence. It's this second type that the book calls considered non-belief. So you see, this form of non-belief isn't just a passive, meh, I don't know. It's a really active intellectual position. It's a two-step process. First, you reject the evidence for a deity's existence. But then, and this is the crucial part, you also have positive reasons of your own for thinking that such a being does not exist. Okay, so who are these considered non-believers? Well, the book takes a look at some sociological data from the US to build a profile, and honestly, it might not be what you'd expect. Now, of course, this is just an abstract profile, but the data that Lorkowski points to paints a really fascinating picture. The average American atheist often tends to be college-educated and politically independent. And get this, they're also statistically more likely to be tolerant, charitable, and actually less likely to commit a violent crime than their religious counterparts. And yet, despite all that, we come right back to that bizarre paradox. About 40% of Americans see the non-religious as somehow problematic. That distrust is real and it is persistent, which is exactly why understanding the rational basis for this worldview is so important. So, how does a non-believer rationally evaluate all these claims? The author lays out a specific framework, a kind of rational toolkit for weighing evidence that's designed to be totally neutral and applicable to any argument. At the heart of this toolkit is a principle called evidentialism, and it's summed up perfectly in this quote from the philosopher David Hume. The idea is simple, but it's so powerful. Your level of belief should match your level of evidence. Strong evidence, strong belief. Weak evidence, weak belief. All right, the next tool in our kit is the burden of proof. It's a simple idea that you probably already know. In any debate, the person who is making a claim has the responsibility to provide the evidence for it. To make this crystal clear, the author uses a fantastic analogy from the courtroom. A defendant is always presumed innocent. We don't just start at 50-50. The prosecution has the entire burden of proving guilt. The default position is always innocence. So that brings us to a really crucial question, doesn't it? If we apply that same logic to a debate about the existence of God, who starts with that burden? Who is making the claim that needs to be proven? According to this rational framework, the answer is clear. The burden of proof always lies with the one making the positive claim, the person who says something exists. Therefore, the author argues the rational default position is non-belief until the believer can present enough evidence to meet that burden. So, with our toolkit in hand, a commitment to evidence, and a clear burden of proof, we can finally set the stage for a rational analysis of the arguments for belief.
The rest of the book basically applies this very toolkit to the common arguments for God's existence, and it sorts them into two pretty distinct categories.
On one side, you have natural theology. These are arguments based on reason and evidence that's available to anyone, stuff like science and logic. On the other side, you have revealed theology, and these are arguments based on special, private sources, like sacred texts, miracles, or personal experience. And this rational toolkit is designed to evaluate claims from both. And that really leaves us with a final thought to chew on. If you had to set aside any personal or revealed sources for just a moment, and you had to construct your entire understanding of the world using only neutral, shared evidence, what would that even look like? Seriously, where would you begin?